Welcome to SF Commercial Property Conversations with Bruce Bean, where Bay Area investments meet expert insights. Get ready to unlock the strategies of commercial real estate success.
So today we have Christy Schnurle with us, and she is working with Opal right now, Opal Investments at Opal Enterprises, and and my phone went off. Christy, it's great to have you on. I would just love to hear how you got from basically the Marshall School at USC into commercial real estate and rendering and now into fund-to-fund investments. So great to have you.
Thank you. And I appreciate your time today and for you having me on, Bruce. Yeah, actually, so the journey from Marshall, I actually specifically chose USC School of Marshall to go to business school, but more specifically chose USC because they had an MRED degree that was available. So Master's in Real Estate Development. So at the time, I was working for a tax credit syndication firm. So straight out of college, I spent 5 years in acquisitions, working for the syndication firm with multifamily projects, low-income housing tax credits, and I was super fascinated by the development world. So I thought I wanted to go down that track of actually developing myself. So that's where I ended up choosing USC. But when I was there, I realized it was a little crazy to be working full-time, doing that part-time, and then pursuing a second degree, master's degree as well simultaneously. So I decided not to pursue the MRED and just went forward with my MBA. And then as I wrapped up my time at USC, my father actually had founded 10 years or so prior a consulting firm in real estate. And he was looking for some additional help. So I shifted after I graduated. I started working with CDK Enterprises, which is a consulting firm for multifamily developers primarily. We also help hospitality, mixed use, but the focus is really on reducing construction costs. And to answer your question about the renderings, that was actually a vertical that was created during my time there. One of the things that we found as we were working with clients is, we had recommendations on value engineering or how they could redesign the site or building layouts, unit configurations to make them more cost effective as you're building them, but not lose the tenant experience. Like keep the high quality, the finishes, everything else, but maybe it was something that was under the floors, behind the walls, just built and constructed in a different way. And so the renderings really helped us with, first of all, with our clients to understand exactly what decisions they were making when we were proposing other options. And two, it helped kind of accelerate the development process for them, because oftentimes as you're moving through entitlements or you're in front of different city boards, things like that, having visuals is really helpful. And it's something that I know you mentioned you have a background in architecture, so I'm sure you can relate on this one. But some of the firms, a lot of them do provide rendering services. Sometimes it's not as quick as the client needs them in terms of, board approvals or things that are popping up. So that's where we would step in, or maybe it was just kind of getting those little concepts iterated in between. So they could really drill down, then go back to the architect and say, okay, here's where we landed with this. Let's move forward with this. And, the architect would implement. So that's kind of been the journey so far of, the last 18 years or so of multifamily, moving through that. I continue to work with CDK. I'm also, a couple of years ago, as you mentioned, I founded Opal Equity. So I do that with a partner. We are focused on the fund-to-fund strategy. So we look for high-level, really experienced operators who really know their asset class, and then connect passive investors with them using kind of like a sub-fund, essentially.
So explain to the listeners that may not understand what a fund-to-fund approach is so that you can explain that to them.
Yeah, absolutely. So a fund to fund is basically kind of like a baby fund that's investing into a parent fund. So with a syndication, you might have, you're raising, let's say you find a 100-unit property, you're raising $10 million. So instead of going out and getting 10 million of equity just from retail investors, you might work with someone like us who is pooling together investors into our own fund. So we essentially become one large LP that's investing in. And so that's kind of the structure there. It's called a fund of funds, where it's sort of this sub fund that's investing in.
So going back to CDK,
Mhm.
I'm kind of fascinated by this because you actually start, it sounds like way back in the beginning, you help the developer go through entitlements, then you actually help the developer kind of expedite and ensure a much better approach to how they're building the project so that it's both a cost savings and efficiency approach to development.
Yeah. It depends on the client. We're not always involved in the very beginning, but that's where we're definitely the most effective. We have clients where even as they're just looking at feasibility in the beginning, they're looking at site design, we will weigh in with kind of like, okay, if you're using these kind of building configurations or this is the goal, here's what we would recommend. And we'll help them sort of make those adjustments even at the site level. And then as they move through, just kind of being involved with the design coordination. One of the things in development that tends to happen is, the developer might have a target budget early on, or if they're like, I need to build this for $14 million is my budget. And they might share that, with their team, the architectural team, engineer, all of these people. But the challenge sometimes is that early on you have this balance of this is what we want to build. We sort of have the concept, but we don't have it all ironed out yet because we're still moving through design development and figuring out all the pieces in between. And then along that process, there becomes this disconnect of like, okay, here was the budget and what we were aiming for. Now, what actually got designed is no longer in alignment. And furthermore, the market in construction is just getting more expensive the longer it takes, right? You have all
Right.
these different challenges that start coming in, or you have financing wasn't where you thought it was, or whatever. So, we really, where we're most effective is when we stay engaged the whole time because we have our thumb really on the pulse of like where are current costs, what are all the different things that go into when people think about cost. Oftentimes they're thinking of just what you can see, right? It's like those finishes, like, oh, well, what if we don't use granite countertops? We
Right.
switch to this or we switch to that. And it's like those do have an impact on cost. But what people don't realize is
Right.
there's a much larger impact of cost if you're looking at something like, okay, do we want to do, are we using eye joists in this project? Or, like what's the floor design or what, wall assembly option are we using? Because there's a lot of different ones, right? And like from an architecture standpoint, as long as it meets code and it's, makes sense for the project, you kind of just plug something in. But oftentimes on a cost, you could have two that look on paper, you think, okay, who cares which one we use? But when you
Mm.
come out the other side of that, there's a huge cost implication and a difference between the two. So that's really where we try to step in and just sort of advise along the way is like, okay, here are different options. Have you considered this? And over the years, over the last decade plus, we've worked on over 55 multifamily and hospitality projects. So we've seen, and that's with a lot of different architectural firms, a lot of developer clients. So we get to see a lot of variety. And so then we learn each project too of the different options that also still might meet code or, other ways that things are being done. So we kind of are pooling from this larger library of options to say, hey, let's see what else could work here and make sense early enough in the process that it can actually get implemented before you're like, went out to bid, you're over budget, and now you're trying to fix everything, go back and change all the plans, right? Which is very expensive and time consuming to do. So our goal is to be involved early and to kind of help and guide that along the way to keep it on target as you go.
So I'm curious, what is CDK's opinion about modular approach?
I mean, we have clients that have explored it. We haven't done a lot of modular building recently. We
Mhm.
did the first 10 years or so of CDK was actually focused primarily on residential. And we did a lot of residential work, over 100,000 homes at the time that we were involved in.
Mm.
And we also actually had a facility that did modular construction for
Oh,
framing.
really?
Yeah, it
Oh,
was called Build a Home in a Day or something, I think was the
oh,
program at the time. This was before I was involved, but
yeah. Right.
Basically, it's like the factory would prep everything, get it onto site, and you would have a team of 5 framers who could pop that home up in less than 8 hours.
Wow.
And it was
Yeah.
kind of that modular concept, using lumber and assembly that way.
Right. Right. But it sounds like you moved away from that and went into more just overall efficiency.
Yeah, we did have some for a while, as we were doing modeling and some BIM related modeling over the years. We did for a while really try to help GCs to implement things that were more efficient, because in what we would model and then output, we had a lot of processes and things where they could follow, like, here's all of the different assemblies. And if you do it, have someone who's inexperienced kind of putting some of these together on site. We have kind of a process for that. It was a way to try to help address the labor and the lack of, like, the skill is dropping in terms of available labor, right? So what do you do about that to try to help get these projects built? And it was like, you're bringing in less experienced people, but you still need a high quality output. So what we did was kind of designed like, okay, if we put these people who are beginners, they're coming in here are the things that they could execute very well. They're kind of assembling these and then giving it to the more experienced, and they're then installing. So um, we did try that for a while. The challenge was a lot of GCs didn't really want to adjust what their process was, even though on paper they're like, this makes sense, but like the time to
Yeah.
train and to figure this out and to kind of follow all of this, so.
Yeah. GCs have their approach, and a lot of times they don't want to vary from that because they're used to doing it this way or that way. And that in itself is probably challenging. So do you sometimes come in and actually recommend a GC for a particular project or several GCs?
Yeah, we do sometimes. So it depends on the client. Sometimes they already have a GC they're working with, they're happy with. Other times they want us to help in that selection process. Usually, when we're involved in that way, it's more of a we will help vet, we'll give you the options or our feedback, but it really is coming down to, like, the client is the one, the developer is the one that's actually making the selection. But we
Right,
do give guidance because we have interview questions that we provide. That's our ideal of, if they're going to continue to want to be working with us through that process. A lot of what we do is less conventional, because we do focus on, building it as cost effectively without reducing any of the quality of the build. We're not like reducing finishes or squeezing profits or cheapening things.
right,
And so it does take a little bit of an open mind to be willing to implement some of the strategies that we use. So we do recommend, if possible, that, we're bringing in a GC who's open minded and willing to kind of consider some of these if they're going to be in alignment with the developer's goals for the project.
right, right. So I'm curious. So you save money for the developer, but
Mhm.
obviously there's a fee involved with CDK. So can you give us some general parameters for what your cost might be in the process?
Yeah. So what we do is we actually typically structure our fees with a guarantee in place. So our
Oh,
philosophy is that, like, if you are hiring us, then we should absolutely be reducing your construction costs. And we won't bring on anyone that we don't think we can help. But we
mm,
have an 8x return guarantee. So basically, our fee, we guarantee that we will reduce the cost by at least 8 times that. Otherwise, we'll
oh,
reduce our fee until you hit that eight times return.
oh, wow. That's interesting. So you will save the the developer, well, let's call it, well, let's just take it $80,000. So your fee would be $10,000. Is that sort
Mhm.
of the basic premise?
Correct. Yeah,
So, so, so they essentially would save $70,000. Is that sort of
correct. Yeah.
correct? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So, wow, that's very appealing. At least I would think that would be very appealing to a developer to try and bring that number in because that obviously puts you under pressure also. But it sounds like you've done this for long enough that you know that you can save that much money in the process.
Yeah, we're very confident when we're looking at a project on the front end, and we've actually never had to reduce our fee. We've always
Wow.
done that or exceeded it. And usually when we're quoting on the front end of how much, we might say like, oh, we can save you $1 million. It's usually our very conservative estimate. We know that we're pretty confident we can save more than that by looking at everything. Because we're not just bringing in one strategy. It's
Right.
not just, oh, we can find a supplier can supply one product for less. It's like
Right, right.
supply, separating material and labor, evaluating the labor as well. Do we need to bring in, traveling subs for this? It's also, is there the ability to explore value engineering options? As I mentioned before, just taking a look at, things like floor, roof trusses, any of those kinds of things. It's like they all have an impact. So
This may be off topic, but I'm just curious what you think of post-tension slabs.
a post-tension slab, that's out of my technical expertise because I don't get involved with some of that.
Oh, okay,
So
okay.
unfortunately, I can't weigh in on that specific one. But
I was just curious. Anyway, so I'm interested to know how is the market right now? Are you all busy right now? What's the development market these days?
it's been interesting. It is definitely 2025 has slowed significantly.
Yeah,
And what we're seeing with clients is that there's a lot that has been placed on hold. So a
yeah.
lot that in 2025 was definitely going on hold or being, some of them were dying completely. Some are still struggling. We're seeing a lot of financing issues where they thought that they were good as we're approaching kind of the, finally you're getting to like closer to break ground. It's like things are falling apart because of financing. So it has slowed significantly. We've been pleasantly surprised with the deals that have moved forward in 2025. We were less optimistic with where we were at with cost and what we could do. We didn't really know over 2024 and 2025. I mean, we use a lot of strategies to reduce cost, right? But it's like when you have costs that are just climbing with so many factors happening. We've been really very happy with where we've landed with things because there's new challenges that have been introduced as well. Like there's some financing that's now requiring, that every single product needs to be American made in the project. And that goes down to like literally anything left on the site. So every screw, every
Oh,
board,
wow.
every single thing needs to be completely American made. So we
Oh,
were a little concerned. There were projects that like towards the end, all of a sudden we were getting these new requirements coming in from certain lending programs. But even with those and kind of implementing and going through processes of like figuring that out and repricing and doing everything, it's like we're still seeing results and reducing costs. So there's still opportunity, even though things are expensive out there, to be able to do that.
so what relationship or what happens when you end up in a union job?
Yeah. So there's it's just each project brings different challenges, right? It's like how we go about and what we do is we assist the GC with the like bidding process is often how it happens. Sometimes we'll just handle all of it, but oftentimes it's kind of in conjunction. So it depends too on who we're working with.
Mhm.
But the way that we approach it, we're able to be flexible with whatever the bidding looks like, right? But yeah, there's some, sometimes you're looking at like, oh, we have to do Beavis Bacon wages and all of these different requirements that come into play. But
Yeah,
it just
you
is what
just
it is.
deal with
Every
it
project
all.
is different. Exactly.
Yeah. So what's your crystal ball saying these days?
Oh gosh, wouldn't we all like the crystal ball?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hopeful things are moving forward. Like it seems like we're getting more traction with people starting to move forward. I think they're seeing like, okay, financing is still tight, but it seems to be loosening a little bit. And as that is loosening, we're seeing more developers that are stepping in and saying, okay, like let's start moving this forward. Because for a while it was like really just sitting on the sidelines. Everyone's kind of waiting. So I think it's starting to move a little bit. As far as what this looks like in a few years, I'm going to be curious too, because we've had this big wave of multifamily that was a lot of starts and completed at the same time because of delays from COVID and everything else. And now we're facing still affordability with housing, all those challenges, and still trying to evaluate like, okay, how much housing is needed and where, and what does that look like for development? I think that's the challenge that developers always have, right? Is trying to predict several years ahead of where they're at and the markets and where's pricing and what makes sense.
So do you work with some affordable housing groups?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's certainly a big market right now. So,
Yep. Yeah, and those are the ones that honestly have been moving. That's where we've seen the most movement over the
yeah.
last year or so, because they do have some of those programs still in place where the financing, though an issue, was less of an issue because they have all these funds coming. They have a much more complicated capital stack, but
Right.
that helped to support them to actually move them forward. So yeah, we do have clients, and we had one. When was that? Spring of, I think 2024, maybe we finished bidding. We had a project that was 72 units in a tiny market in Montana, and they ran into an issue because with tax credits, whatever budget it is that you go in and you get approved for, like you have to hit that. You can't be $1 over, or they're like, no funding. Tax credits go away and your whole deal falls apart.
Wow.
So anyhow, we did have one client where that was the position they were in. They were like, okay, we, had a budget of 14 million, but now we are at, the GC's telling us we're at like 19 million or 19.5 million, I think it was. And how do we come down from that? So we worked with them and we actually did get it down to 14 million.
Oh, wow.
That one was aggressive. Yeah. That one had, I think, almost 2 million of like value engineering that was coming into play too. So it's like, there was a lot of value engineering as we're going to kind of keep that tighter. But even just with the other costs of looking at things like traveling subs, who can we bring in, like framing is a huge cost saving, like looking at small markets in Montana, like that's a huge cost. So not using someone local and being able to bring in a framing crew from elsewhere, things like that really help.
That's interesting. All right. Well, I think we could talk for another 2 days here, but for the moment, let's stop. And where can people get a hold of you, Christy?
Yeah, they can email me at Christy@cdkinc.com, and that's CHRISTY at CDKINC.com. That's also our website, CDKinc.com. So you can go there. We have, you can schedule a call or look at what we do. We also have over on our resources page, if you want to see some of the things I was talking about, we have a free training over there that goes through that one case study I mentioned earlier where we reduced the cost by about $4.5 million. We literally walk through, show the examples, all the tactics we used, the dollar amounts, how that all played out, so people can see if it makes sense for that. Some of those same strategies, can they be applying into their own projects? So you can find that over on our resources page there.
That is fantastic. So let's pause for the moment. I look forward to talking to you again 3 to 6 months ahead, just to kind of see what our crystal ball is looking like. That would be very fun to see where the development world is going.
That's a wrap on today's journey through the SF commercial real estate scene. Ready to share your story? Visit sfcommercialconversations.com/guest. Your insights could lead the next conversation.